How's it going, everybody? I'm recording this on Christmas Day, mainly because of the fact that, yeah, I might as well at least get some recording done at this point. I felt like at least starting off this video with a bit of a thank you to everybody that's watching this and helped this channel even get to this point. Like, I genuinely still cannot believe that I've even reached 1,000, like, even today, and for some reason I'm still growing. And, yeah. Now, of course, the video that you're about to be watching has been, well, several months in the making at this point, and that's for a number of different reasons. Number one, I wanted to be of decent quality, and also number two, well, a lot of scheduling conflicts. And you're probably wondering why I'm wearing this insane-looking mask right now, and, well, the main reason is largely because I just don't care, and I feel like at least using this within one video, so why the hell not use it within quite possibly one of the biggest videos I think I've ever made. Now, of course, I probably will have done, like, a few things to at least kind of make up for the lack of content that I've been uploading, and of course, what's going to be extremely fun is, of course, the jingling fucking bells that are on this goddamn thing. That's probably going to be messing with the recording the entire time. You know, that won't be too much of a problem within the main video, at least hopefully. I'm not going to be wearing this. I'm going to be either wearing just my regular mask, or the most I'm going to be wearing is just this hat and this robe, because of the fact that, well, sometimes the mask can get a little bit uncomfortable. And of course, behind me, you can see my collection of masks. No, it is not a problem. Trust me, bro. Now, yes, enough of this preamble, enough of this weird sappy intro of me just stating thank you guys so much. Obviously, regular content will pretty much resume after this entire video is done at this fucking point. But I do, in fact, want to thank you guys so much for at least sticking around and being patient with me while I put this big one together, because it's about something that I really care about, and I really, really wanted to get this done. So, yeah. Hopefully you guys enjoy it just as much as I enjoyed making it. Anyways, onwards to the video itself. Well, it's been a while since, I've actually uploaded anything, hasn't it? Here we are with quite the video here. So, of course, if you guys are really familiar at all with just my channel, just at all, you know that I'm a big fan of video games. Really, there's no particular genre of game that I really prefer over any others. Like, one moment you'll be finding me playing a platformer like Celeste, next moment you'll be finding me playing fucking Elden Ring, and then the following second after that, I'll probably be playing Ultra Kill. There's really, I just have a wide array of different games that I genuinely just enjoy. As long as I find interest in it, and as long as I'm having fun, I'm bound to just continue to play it, and I'm bound to be a fan. However, there's still one particular game, out of all the other games that I've genuinely played throughout my multiple years of even playing games, it still sticks with me to this day. It is a game that, in some ways, has even shaped how I am as a person, if that makes any kind of sense whatsoever. And, well, it's a very simple game, a very simple, like, top-down puzzle RPG game that goes by the name of Oneshot. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, especially the veterans in my audience right now, you're probably already thinking to yourself, wait, Sandy, didn't you already make a video about this? Didn't you already make a video, like, what, like 2 years ago at this point? Over 2 years ago? Talking about the exact same game? Yes. And I'm doing it again because, looking back on it now, that old video sucked, and I genuinely want to redo it, this time even better than before, because, well, let's put it this way. I don't feel like I went in-depth enough in that old video covering Oneshot to really do it any proper justice, and that's why I'm deciding to redo it now. This video is of course going to be a nice redo of my old Oneshot video from 2 years ago, this time with a few different segments that honestly I didn't have the time to put into that old video due to time constraints as well as other personal things going on in my life. And, well, this time, hopefully, a ton more effort going into it. Now, depending on when this video ends up uploading, I'm particularly anticipating it to come out at some point, maybe. I'm anticipating it to come out at some point, maybe during, like, January or something along those lines. My birthday may or may not have even already passed. But, yeah. Anyways, guys, without any further ado, let us sit back, relax, grab some popcorn, and let's dive right into Oneshot. So I feel like the best way to actually start off a video about One-Shot is, of course, to give a little bit of a history lesson in regards to the game itself. After all, I'm pretty sure most of you guys, if you're even somewhat familiar with the game, you're probably mostly only familiar with, well, the Steam release of the game that was released at some point around, like, late 2016-ish. You know, around the same exact time that, well, I think Undertale was released, as well as, well, like, the 4th entry to the Five Nights at Freddy's series. I genuinely have no idea. I can't be asked to follow along with that series anymore. It's too confusing. But, of course, because of that, it didn't exactly get that much of an audience. Even though Markiplier himself even did an entire series going through at least one of the endings of the game, he did manage to give it a little bit of an audience, although it was more of a cult following. Of course, as time went on, the game itself ended up gaining a lot more popularity to the point where now there's official console ports and even a Switch port that exists called World Machine Edition, which is just... yeah, that's just wild to even think about, let's be honest here. It is genuinely amazing that this entire game itself only started off with 2 people creating it as just a little bit of like an entry to a competition. So the 2 main lead developers of One-Shot are, of course, Eliza Velasquez and Casey Ju. I feel like I'm butchering the other guys' like last name, so I'm just gonna call them by their online name, which is Night Margin, or just Night for short, because I have no idea if I'm actually pronouncing that last name correctly, and I really do not want to do that anymore out of respect. Now, the first version of this game was a freeware version that was developed for the RPG Maker, like, 2014 Indie Development Contest around, like, June of 2014. And the game itself, the freeware version, was made within the span of a month for this competition. Now, the game itself didn't exactly win any accolades, however, it was, in fact, a very unique enough game for an indie studio to eventually come across the game at some point afterwards. Now, after they finished the game and after they submitted the game for the competition, the 2 didn't really continue working on it, mainly because they just didn't have the time nor the resources to continue working on it and build it into what they, well, initially envisioned, fuck's sake, for the game itself. And, of course, because of this, it just kind of remained in limbo for a while. That was until Desc ended up coming along, saw One-Shot, and went like, hey, you 2, what if we gave you some help and you could develop this game into something absolutely fucking wild? And that they did. They ended up gaining a new person onto their team, and they were able to develop the current and most well-known version of One-Shot, which is, of course, the Steam release of One-Shot that was released around 2016. Now, of course, like I mentioned before, it didn't start off with too much of an audience, but as time went on, it ended up gaining more and more of an audience to the point where consoles ended up getting the game, and eventually even the Nintendo Switch got a port of the game, which genuinely still blows my mind to this day. Of course, the differences between the more well-known versions of One-Shot compared to the freeware version aren't exactly too different, per se. Obviously, the style of the game is very different, the art style is very different, it's a little bit more janky because, well, it was made in a fucking month, and of course, there's one particular aspect that genuinely makes me not want to play it, mainly because I feel like I would probably screw up and accidentally kill the main character. Yeah, you could just do that in the freeware version. You could just straight up kill Nico if you genuinely wanted to. And considering that that is a possibility that you could do by accidentally, well, even just so much as accidentally closing the game without the game closing itself, yeah, I don't think I want to do that. But now that we've gotten a history lesson all done and over with, I can at least get started on, well, the Steam release of One-Shot, because that's the main one that we're talking about, and that's the main one that I'm familiar with, so of course that's the main one that we're even going to be covering within this video. So without further ado, let us get started with the actual game itself. So One-Shot itself starts off, well, relatively simply. It starts off with the main character, which goes by the name of Nico, as mentioned before, waking up and immediately calling out for someone the moment that they wake up in this unfamiliar, dark room of sorts. They don't exactly know where they are, so of course, after Nico doesn't really get a response, after calling for someone, they end up getting out of bed, and that is the point in which you are able to take control and guide Nico. Now, you're already beginning to notice that I'm creating a bit of a separation between the player, well, us, and the player character, which is Nico. Now, of course, this isn't really a unique concept by any means. After all, other games have already kind of done this. Other RPG-style games like, well, fucking Deltarune. Trust me, it's not a unique concept, and even I can admit to that. But of course, the way that Oneshot does it is honestly pretty interesting in my personal opinion, so just hold your horses. If it's already turning you off by that separation, trust me, please just hold tight, okay? Alright? Thank you. Now, of course, as you begin to explore this room, you can pretty much take notice of a few interesting things. There's a bookshelf in which it's too dark to read anything. There's a remote off in the corner of the room. There's one singular window with a soft light coming out of it, 2 locked doors, and of course, well, a computer that is asking for a 4-digit and 4-colored passcode. And it's pretty simple, because this is, well, the first part of the tutorial, if you will. So, what you need to do is, of course, open up your inventory, select the remote, and once you have that remote selected, it pretty much counts as Nico, well, holding on to the item. You can then take this remote over towards the only source of light that exists within this room, presumably, which is, well, the window. And that is when Nico can actually read what is on the remote. 4 different numbers in 4 different colors, which of course correspond to the 4 colors that are on the computer. And of course the 4 different colors, which I'm mainly mentioning because it at least kind of plays a little bit of importance to the overall just environment of the world itself. The 4 different colors are of course blue, green, red, and yellow. I believe in that order is how the computer asked for it, so there you go. But of course, once you finally put in the code, that is of course when the computer will turn on, opens up to a desktop, and of course, an entity will begin to speak to you. You found me. Why? You're already too late. Not much of this world remains. This will be apparent once you go outside. This place was never worth saving. Do you still want to try? Then remember this. Your actions here will affect Nico. Your mission is to help Nico leave. And most importantly, you only have 1 shot. Now, this particular opening is pretty much one of the more interesting ways to open up a game, because it already sets up that this is not going to be a standard run-of-the-mill RPG-styled puzzle game. You're going to need to do a lot of external things to solve a lot of your problems, because, well, there's a lot of meta shit that exists in here, and this introduction is, well, already serving its purpose to let you know that, hey, this game knows that you're here! But after this, the 2 doors that were previously locked will now be unlocked. Going over towards the left, it leads to a bathroom with no running water in it, and a singular withered plant in which Nico can grab a dry twig off of. The other door leads into a much larger area in which Nico will once again call out for someone to answer, and will, once again, receive no answer. Within this large area, it appears to be a living room connected to a kitchen of some kind. There's 2 locked doors, once again, and this particular area is introducing you to the crafting system of this game. Yes, this game has a crafting system because, yeah, you're gonna need to use your brain a lot in this game, so yeah, prepare yourselves for that. So of course within this particular area there's of course, well, first there's the living room, which has a smashed TV that has sparks coming off of it, a fireplace, and connected to it is of course the kitchen. The kitchen has a refrigerator that has a bottle of alcohol in it. Now of course if you were to take the dry twig over to the, television and, try to light the twig that way, well, it wouldn't exactly work. So of course what you need to do is of course coat it in something that's flammable. What's flammable? Well, obviously it's alcohol. So you take the bottle of alcohol, combine it with the twig, and there you go, you get yourself a nice twig that is perfectly nice and flammable. So that way you can light the twig on fire with the sparks, take it over to the fireplace, and light up the room, which will then reveal a key that has been wedged into the floorboards that will allow you to finally enter the basement. And this basement has a long staircase that is almost reminiscent of the spinal staircase of P-1. Jesus Christ. But of course, once you're finally at the bottom of this staircase, you finally end up coming across, well, a light bulb. Nico will begin to pick this light bulb up, it'll activate on its own. And now, you have 1 item that you're going to be carrying throughout pretty much most of the rest of the game here. get comfortable. You can finally take that light bulb over towards the other locked door, and use the light bulb in order to unlock it, and finally enter the world itself. And the first segment of the world that you enter is none other than... So once Nico heads through that door, it pretty much starts off in like a rundown train car of sorts. Nico is confused, and upon stepping out, it greets us to a nice little cutscene of Nico standing out into the world, looking out off into the distance, and seeing a giant tower stretching off into the sky. Now, again, keep this tower in mind. It'll be explained very shortly here. Just know that that is going to be the final destination if that wasn't already obvious to begin with. You can explore this area a little bit. Going upwards, you can find another train car that has a pipe of some kind inside of it that you can take. And, of course, well, the train car in which you found the pipe in, there's also a bed. Once again, keep that in mind. Going further upwards, it leads to a gas vent area that Nico is unable to really breathe in, so you automatically leave it. Of course, continuing to go downwards, you'll end up coming across an outpost in which Nico will then be greeted by, well, what is simply known as the Prophet Bot. It's a prophet robot that pretty much lets Nico know about the different aspects of the world, or at least as much of the world as the bot itself was even built with. So, of course, this robot automatically greets Nico, lets Nico know about their own role as supposedly the messiah of this world, and the Prophet Bot then allows Nico to ask 4 questions to start off with. And I'll go over the different answers of each of these starting questions here, just to kind of explain some things here. So, of course, if you decide to ask about this world, it leads to a brief explanation about the tower, and that tower being what held the previous sun of the world, and also describing how the world itself is divided into 3 different regions, and how Nico is on the edge of the world right now, which is, well, as mentioned before, the Barrens. Asking about the light bulb pretty much elaborates on, well, how the light bulb that Nico is currently holding is the new sun, what happened to the old sun, which is, of course, that just mysteriously went out one day, and how an element known as phosphor is the only thing that is actually keeping the world running as of right now, and if the sun were to be destroyed in any way, it would cause the entire world to end in an instant. So, yeah, you better keep that light bulb nice and handy. Asking about the computer, we'll of course have Nico ask about the mysterious entity that began to speak to, well, not Nico, but to another being entirely, which of course is then the introduction of our role as a player being, and I shit you not, the god of the world. Yes, you are in fact God in this game. I am not making that up. Pretty much lets us know about our role as god of this world, and of course tells Nico that Nico is the only one that is capable of speaking to us directly, in which Nico proceeds to do so, asks us if we can even hear them, and of course this is the point in which you can pretty much, well, change the name that the game decided to give you, because the game takes your desktop name and uses that as, well, the name for you as the player. You can obviously have that changed, and of course the game will change accordingly. And from here on out, Nico will begin to mostly converse with you directly in terms of just speaking, like, in any way, shape, or form. And then asking about going home won't really lead to anywhere other than just kind of Nico having some obvious uncertainty of the journey ahead. The Prophet Bot just kind of going, well, I don't know what you expect me to do. I mean, all I can really tell you is, well, all you have to do is just take the sun over, and my only goal right here is to let you know some of the basics, and that's really it. And of course, after this, you can go back up to the Prophet Bot and ask about like 3 more questions, and I might as well just go over those right now, because why not? So of course, you can ask about the Barrens, which of course reveals that the Prophet Bot is not even aware if there's really any other regular people left in the Barrens whatsoever, mainly because he apparently wasn't programmed to even leave the post that he stands outside of, and really has no idea about the whereabouts of really anything going on as of right now, other than just what he was already pre-built with, and introduces us to a specific term that's going to be repeated a lot in this game, which is of course the word tamed. Keep this term in mind, as it will play a lot more importance as we continue going throughout this game. Asking about the prophecy reveals that the Prophet Bot, well, wasn't actually built to foresee the future, it was just pre-built with the prophecy that, well, was already foretold by a prophet off in the past, and it's just kind of mainly echoing that prophecy that was already foretold by someone else entirely. So, and then asking about the tower reveals that the Prophet Bot has no knowledge of what's in the tower or what even needs to be done in order to even get in, and just simply states that, well, us as the player will know what to do when we get there. But now you can wander around and explore a little bit. If you decide to explore the outpost a little bit, you'll find a few different notes here. Some of these notes are actually very, interesting and give a little bit of world building as to what the Barrens used to be before, well, well, it ended up becoming so, well, dare I say, barren.
The use of a robot as a replacement head engineer seems unorthodox, especially the one responsible for last year's incident. I suppose they had to get away from the city, but that doesn't make it any easier to swallow for those of us who work here. Well, that man knows what he's doing.
5 new positions available at the mines. Housing and other provisions are included upon hire. First come, first serve.
Of course, off on the other side is, of course, a very interesting note that has Isaac Asimov's 3 fundamental laws of robotics, and I might as well just have that one play out for you as well, because, well, again, it's another thing that's going to play a little bit of importance here as we continue going.
A robot may not injure a living person or through an action allow a person to come to harm. 2. A robot must obey the orders given to it by people, except where such orders would conflict with the first law. 3. A robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law.
Now, of course, outside of the notes within this outpost, there's a few other interesting little landmarks and interesting little things that you can discover here. There's a box that has a note beside it saying that what is inside is apparently a solar battery of sorts, so that's going to be important. There's a computer that is currently turned off. Going into the next room within the outpost reveals that it's a gigantic generator room, and the generator currently, well, doesn't have a battery inside of it. So I think you can pretty much already piece together what your main goal is here. To, well, get into the battery. Now, you can't really get to the battery, mainly because the box is sealed so tightly that only a thin enough object with enough force could potentially open it. You know, something like a crowbar, perhaps? Don't worry, we'll be getting into that very shortly here. And of course, proceeding onwards and over more towards the right, there's a little bit of a rundown factory that only has one functioning machine, which is a constantly running hydraulic press of sorts. Now, continuing on, there's a gigantic cliff area that has a few interesting notes here and there, giving a bit more world building.
But the mining operation is going smoothly. Materials are no longer a limiting factor. We'll be able to build more resilient robots both in body and mind. Specifically, the discovery of metal alloy 291 will likely allow development of highly efficient circuitry.
And of course, there's a safe that is locked with a 6-digit code that we don't even know of yet. So keep that in mind, obviously, for later. But of course, continuing onwards towards the right, it leads us to a much longer and much less destroyed-looking cliff face that has, well, a little bit of a house towards the end of it. And inside of this house is a bit more of a humanoid-looking robot that immediately notices Nico and the sun, and after a bit of a comedic exchange regarding Nico's appearance being that of, well, being similar to that of a cat, the android then expresses a bit of pessimism and uncertainty of Nico's ability to even, well, actually fix the world using the sun in the first place. Now, of course, after this dialogue, Nico is then able to wander around. There's a note that pretty much is from, well, presumably the creator of this robot. That pretty much gives us the name of the robot as well as the name of its creator.
Dear Silver, I heard the news about the mines. I'm sorry, I can't imagine what you're feeling. It's been 2 weeks. I know it must be hard, but maybe it's better that you came back. It's only a matter of time before the robots are recalled. At least let me know you got my message, okay?
And of course, aside from the note, there's also a screwdriver on the shelf that you can pick up and kind of use for later. Now, of course, if you decide to inspect the chess table, Silver explains how she hasn't really even been able to play with anyone since none of the other robots are capable of playing it, nor are they, well, once again, tamed. Again, there's that word again. Keep it in mind. Why am I holding a wire? Of course, leaving this house and continuing onwards, there's a chained-off cave. Trying to enter it will, of course, have Silver immediately stop Nico and state that she has to accompany Nico at least once within these caves before Nico is able to freely explore it on their own. In which, well, that's what Silver does. She cuts the chains off using some unknown method. My headcanon is that she basically fucking karate chops the fucking thing. That is the point in which you are finally able to explore a little bit. Inside is a broken gadget of some kind, presumably another battery of sorts that is destroyed beyond repair aside from its lens. And of course, going a little bit towards the right, towards the railways, will of course lead to, well, a minecart rail that stretches off deeper into the caverns, but, well, Nico isn't able to really go on to there whatsoever because, well, there isn't really a minecart, and Silver really won't allow Nico to just run along the tracks because, well, that's just a stupid idea to begin with. And of course, Silver will express another interesting thing about these mines you need in order to actually solve the first in-game puzzle. First things first, you take the screwdriver towards the mysterious gadget, pop the lens out, there you go. Part 1 solved. Next, you take the little metal pipe that you have, you take it over to that rundown factory over towards a hydraulic press, and you hydraulic press that son of a bitch into a crowbar. Hello, Gordon. Then you take that crowbar over towards the box that held the solar battery, crack it open, and now you're able to grab the solar battery. You pop in a brand new lens because the old lens on the battery is now broken, and now you can take the sun towards the solar battery because, well, you are just straight up holding the sun, and you can immediately charge it using that. Yes, that's how this game works. And now you can finally take that charged solar battery over towards that rundown generator, and now you can finally power everything up in the Barrens once again. And now, everything is powered up, including that computer. Hey, I wonder what's interesting about that computer.
I see you've made progress in this world, Sanity. But that progress stops here. I believe you need a code to unlock a certain box. Well, the code no longer exists in this world. Do you understand what this means, Sanity?
Hello and welcome to the first meta puzzle of the game, and it's relatively simple. You just simply go into the one-shot documents folder, and inside will of course be an extremely screwed up note where barely anything is actually legible. And of course the main thing that you really need to pay attention to is of course the 6-digit code towards the end of it. And of course that 6-digit code is what we need in order to unlock the safe. Inside the safe is of course a gas mask and a mysterious journal written in a language that not even Nico can understand. Upon attempting to leave, some sort of weird square disruption appears that catches both Nico and yourself off guard. Keep these squares in mind as they'll become much more prevalent as the game continues. Now you can kind of freely explore a little bit, although I think at this point Nico is probably a little bit tired. So of course you can kind of take Nico over towards that bed that you found and have Nico take a nice little nap for once. After all, I think they've earned it after all the hard work that they've went through. When you reopen the game, it opens up in, well, a dream sequence. Nico awakens in some sort of a wheat field of sorts, and is, well, seemingly quite excited by this. They immediately begin to look around in confusion and amazement, and kind of begin to question what they need to do next, in which they seem to spot something off in the corner of their eye, and they begin to walk towards it, and that is when the dream pretty much comes to a close. When Nico awakens, it starts off this very interesting conversation between yourself and Nico, with both of you kind of giving a little bit of information about each other's worlds. Of course, you can tell Nico that you did in fact see their dream, and were able to pretty much catch a glimpse as to what Nico's world itself, or at least their home, looks like. Of course, there's a few interesting questions here regarding a lot of the different things that both you and Nico have experienced. And of course, there's a nice little call out of people using computers late into the night. But after this conversation, it is then in which both you and Nico are finally able to continue onwards throughout your journey. Now, of course, in this area, there's also a bit of like a robot here, and I mean like robot as in spelled like this. Now, of course, you can interact with this robot, and of course this robot is now active, in which the robot will express the fact that it cannot move whatsoever due to it being rusted beyond words. So, now we have our next mission. Try to derust the robot. Now that you have the gas mask, you're able to enter the gas vent zone, and you can explore a little bit and find a few different interesting little tidbits of information here and there, as well as a bubbled over kind of like crater of sorts, and of course a gas vent that is closer to the ground around Nico's level. These two will of course be very important, so keep these two locations in mind for later on for this particular next in-game puzzle. And of course, continuing onwards, it'll lead to a bit of a residential area that you can explore. There's a medical station in which you can grab a plastic syringe. There's a few other interesting notes that I will just kind of go over right here that give a bit more world building into the game.
Evacuation at such short notice? I can't believe this. First, the sun dies, now I'm out of a job.
Looks like we're supposed to pack stuff for evacuation starting today. Wish these books weren't so heavy. It's gonna be a pain to carry them onto the ship. But they're by the author, I can't just throw them away. Apparently phase 1 of the evacuation ended prematurely. The big ship started malfunctioning only after a few round trips. Does that always do to something with squares? I'm not sure what they mean by that. Bummer. Looks like they won't be able to transport most of these surplus bots to the city at this rate. They work so hard on those. But I suppose the robots are busy enough transporting people as it is. I think it's gonna be our turn soon.
And of course, towards the other side of the residential area, there is of course this big robot that you can kind of interact with that once again mentions taming. Again, this word is going to be very important and it will be explained later. Sure, it may not make any kind of sense whatsoever as of right now, but trust me, it'll make sense as we continue. But of course, on the complete other side of this residential area is yet another gas vent zone with yet another rundown factory. Within this factory is of course a boarded off area that Nico can use a crowbar in order to get into, and of course, within this factory is of course a pair of rubber gloves and a rough sponge that you can use. There's also another note within this gas vent area that kind of details that the robots that are working within the gas vent area do not rust nearly as fast as robots that are outside of it. Once again, giving a nice little hint as to what you need to do. And of course, throughout the factory, there's of course instructions as to how to create a derusting acid solution of sorts. There you go, you now have everything that you need in order to solve this next puzzle. So now you go back over to the previous gas vent zone, and you take that syringe over towards the bubbled up crater of sorts, in which you'll grab that little fluid. Then of course you go over to the low down gas vent and use the empty bottle that you still have for whatever reason, and scoop up some of that gas. Then you take the syringe and the bottle, combine the two, and that'll create the acid, and then you can finally take that over to the robot, take the acid and put it onto the sponge, and use that now wet sponge in order to derust the robot. And now we're finally ready to proceed on to the next region, except you're not, because the robot has no idea where to actually go. Apparently it's been inactive for so long that its navigation circuits are fried, and now you need to find another method in order to fix it. It just tells you to speak to the head engineer, and that's really about it, so there you go. You now know what you need to do. You need to go back over to Silver and ask Silver if she knows anything about how to fix this. And thankfully, Silver actually does. Going back to Silver, we'll of course have Silver give you an amber pendant that has a clover that is from the next region, which is the Glen, that is within it. And before leaving, Nico decides to play a little bit of a chess game and have a little bit of a conversation with Silver.
You're really good at this.
Thank you. It was built into my code.
So what's it like? Being a robot and all. I've talked to other robots. They all say something about programming and code and stuff. Even you did, just now. It's a little hard to understand sometimes.
I know. Most of the robots here are not tamed.
Tamed?
Taming is complicated.
Oh? How complicated, exactly?
I can't really explain what tamed robots are, but I'm one of them. All the other tamed robots have been moved over to other regions. Exactly where, I don't know.
Oh, have you been to any other regions? I heard there's 2 more.
In the past, yes. I still have the data, the coordinates, the memories. I don't know how much of that still holds true. The world may be a very different place now.
Because the sun's gone?
I said this already, didn't I? The sun probably won't save the world. The decaying started long before the sun went out. The sun's sudden death was just the tipping point, and things went south really fast after that.
There's nothing I can do?
The only thing you can do is complete your pilgrimage. In a way, you're only supposed to be a second chance for the people. Just like how the Barrens were only supposed to be a second chance for me. There's no guarantee that things will work out.
Now, this particular conversation, in my opinion, is, once again, another very interesting one. It is kind of detailing the fact that even though Silver is a tamed robot, she still knows just about as much of the world, or at least the current state of the world, as some of the other robots within the Barrens. It's an interesting idea of kind of giving you a little bit of a hint as to what taming really means, but not really the process of actually doing so. Of course, we can pretty much already piece together that taming overall just means that a robot pretty much just kind of becomes fully sentient. It pretty much believes itself to, at least in some way, think of itself as a living human being, rather than it just being a cold, unfeeling hunk of metal. And it's a very interesting idea that at least we now understand a bit of a definition of, but we don't really know how it's achieved or what really causes it or why this was even a thing to really strive for in the first place. I mean, I guess I can kind of think of some ideas, and probably you guys can probably think of some ideas too as to why someone would try to strive for something like this, but that's really neither here nor there at this point. But now that we finally have this amber medallion, we can take it back over to the robot, show it to the robot, and the robot will then remember where to go next. And now, the robot will finally be able to take Nico and go towards the next region, which is the Glen. As you arrive at the Glen, the robot will then leave in order to go back, as that is what its programming is telling it to do, leaving Nico to explore and go through the entryway area that leads into yet another nice, beautiful cutscene of Nico looking out at the landscape that is right before them. Welcome to the Glen, everybody. It's a very, very different place compared to the Barrens, of course, both in terms of style as well as just the overall aesthetic. Well, the Barrens was kind of like a run-down and abandoned industrial area where a lot of, well, factory work and mining and shit was done. The Glen is extremely different. It's a lot more agricultural in nature and a lot more natural looking, I suppose. There's lots of green everywhere. That's all you need to know. And of course, instead of it mostly being populated by robots that have probably lost their purpose, it is populated by a bunch of bird people. Now, of course, you can speak to some of the nearby residents around the entryway area that kind of give an idea as to the current state that the Glen is in. Mainly, it's falling apart due to a lot of flooding, as well as some weird square disruption happening here and there, and that's kind of really about it. If you decide to explore upwards, it leads to a small village that's connected to a field, and one resident seems to share a similar sentiment to Silver, which is, well, that the sun may not even be able to really fix every single problem that is happening in the world. Don't let this discourage you, though. You still have a mission to complete. In the connected field, there's mostly sheep and, of course, a shepherd. The shepherd tells Nico that Nico has to kind of free their hands before they're really able to help him herd the sheep that are nearby. So there you go, that's really about it. And of course, past this field, there is a kind of wandering trader of sorts, as well as a pathway that is blocked by vines. Again, keep these in mind. They'll be a little bit more important later on in this particular region. Just know that they're play importance. Now, of course, going back and downwards from the starting area will, of course, introduce us to one of the first more important characters within this particular region, which is, of course, Calamus. I'll just say his name right now, so that way we don't have to wait several minutes to actually be introduced to this man's name. And, of course, Calamus immediately stops himself after realizing who in the world he's actually speaking to, which is the Messiah, in which, well, Nico is extremely casual about it and really doesn't mind all too much. Now, Calamus himself is running around and currently looking for someone that goes by the name of Alula, which is, well, his sister, and pretty much only states that the last time that he had actually seen Alula was back in the ruins, and that they would pretty much meet up at that particular area, but since Alula hasn't shown up in a while, he's now extremely worried. He's also one of the few people that are still living in the ruins for whatever reason, so there you go, there's also that. Now, of course, going towards the right will lead to another blocked doorway and a guarded gate that apparently goes to the refuge. Of course, speaking to this guardian robot of sorts, he pretty much just kind of says, well, I mean, all you need to do is just write your name on the scroll and I'll let you through. But of course, he doesn't have a pen, and neither does Nico. So there you go. There's your first clue as to what your overall main goal is here. Find a pen, or make one, somehow. And of course, past that gate guardian is so far the only doorway that isn't blocked by fucking vines. So now you can... And of course, past the Gate Guardian is of course the only doorway that isn't blocked by vines that leads into the ruins. You can pretty much explore most of this area, but a lot of it is mainly taken over due to flooding, as well as some square disruption, and of course a few more vines that are blocking various parts of the ruins itself. And of course one particular pathway that's blocked by debris of some kind that for some reason Nico just isn't able to push aside, despite the fact that it's like literally a quarter of their size. But of course, within one particular room that is not blocked by vines, there is yet another computer. That leads us into the next meta puzzle.
Hello again, Sanity. It seems I need to help you again. Eiko will not be able to progress otherwise. This time, the information you need has fallen to the most easily accessible place on your machine. Do you see it?
Yeah, it changed your desktop background, and you're going to need to pay attention to that pattern as it'll be important here very, very soon. Now, going further downwards, you can pretty much speak to a couple of other robots. That gives us information as to why there are vines all over the place, and going even further downwards leads to some sort of garden pathway leading to another character that goes by the name of Maze. She is very screwed up. So of course, Maze, being in a high level of stress, is kind of asking Nico if it wouldn't be too much to ask for to leave the sun behind for her during her last moments. In which, well, that's kind of what you need to do in order to progress anyways, so that's what you do. You hand the sun over to Maze, and now you're not going to have the sun until later on in this particular region. But now that Maze has the sun, she is now calmed down enough for the vines that were previously blocking various pathways to, well, no longer be doing so, leaving a lot of different pathways now open to explore. Now, of course, one of the originally blocked pathways within the ruins now leads into, well, a light floor puzzle room. Guess what? That light floor puzzle is used to actually, well, used in correspondence with what your desktop background has now become. Putting in that code will of course revert your desktop background, and Alula will come out of the now newly unblocked pathway, and will join your party after realizing who Nico is, and noticing what Nico kind of originally came there for. So now you kind of have Alula following you around until you finally reach Calamus, and that's really about it. You can still explore a little bit more with Alula, like, for example, further down from the island where we found Calamus on, there's like a research station that's going on, in which you can get like a vial of water that you can use for later if you truly want to. But now you can take Alula back over to Calamus. Calamus will pretty much invite Nico over to visit their house, in which, well, Nico will readily accept for obvious reasons. And of course, from there, it pretty much just kind of plays out a little bit of a thing where you can explore around into their house. Alula will give Nico a glowing yellow feather that apparently came from a late prophet that used to exist within the Glen. You can continue exploring towards the right of the house, which leads into a courtyard of sorts that you can explore. Further into the courtyard is, of course, what appears to be a hidden pathway towards a burial ground of sorts, at least according to Calamus and Alula themselves, in which, yeah, that's really about it. It's just a hidden pathway that has pretty much been taken over by flooding, meaning that they can't really go past. But of course, apparently they used to have a friend that had a flying machine that allowed them to actually get over the flooding and still be able to visit their deceased mother. But apparently this friend of theirs hasn't really been around for a while, so they haven't really been able to, you know, visit these burial grounds for a while, so. But of course, afterwards, you are now able to freely explore a little bit more. Of course, one of the previously blocked pathways within the ruins, another one, leads back into the area in which you found the wandering trader in. Now you can go back over to the shepherd, do a little bit of a sheep puzzle, and the shepherd will give you a nice handful of ram wool. I mean, hey, it's something. And you can trade this away over to the wandering trader to get a nice bit of fabric dye, which you can then use to go right back over towards that gate guardian, use that fabric dye on the pen in order to turn it into a makeshift quill, and Nico will then write their name onto the scroll, and now, of course, before you actually decide to go through that gate, you can have Nico take another nice little rest. After all, once again, I'm pretty sure they've earned it. And the dream that happens once you reopen the game, it pretty much picks up where the last dream left off, with Nico exploring the wheat field a little bit and running towards what appears to be a distant town off into the distance before the dream ends. Once again, another conversation occurs in which, well, Nico and yourself end up sharing a little bit of information about your own experiences. And again, I really enjoy these interactions because it kind of allows you to make a bit more of a connection with the character that you have control of, more than, well, maybe some other games that kind of have this facet of the player and the player character are two separate entities within the world. It allows you to kind of, I guess, relate a little bit more to the character in some ways, almost kind of with that character becoming somewhat of a friend, even if it is just, well, a character within a video game. It's just kind of nice in my opinion. But after this...
And also after, grabbing the sun back from Maze, I almost forgot to mention that. When you find Maze again, she's kind of dead, and all that's left behind is just like a small seed that you can also collect. So, yeah, I just felt like I should have mentioned that as well, because I was stupid while recording and completely forgot to mention this. So, yeah, there you go.
You're then able to go through the gate, and Jesus fucking Christ, what is going Welcome to the Refuge. It starts off in a point above ground level as pointed out by a robot that you soon encounter, and, well, now you know your main goal. Get back to ground level so that way you can continue onwards. As you proceed, Nico hears someone nearby struggling with, well, something. What appears to be some sort of metallic door of some kind, frustrated. And upon investigation, it is a guy that's trying to open up the elevator, but the elevator doesn't have a button that allows it to open, so he's just resorting to, I guess, judgment kicking the thing until it finally opens at some point. I don't know why his plan is... I'm sorry, I just find his plan of just, well, there isn't a button, so screw it. I'll just use my foot. This is clearly a good idea. Judgment! But now you kind of understand an overall idea as to what you're supposed to do. And that is, of course, to, well, find a button. Or potentially make one, if that's even possible. Trust me, it is. It's a weird game, after all. And even despite this man's skepticism, which I think according to the game's files, he's just named Plight, so we're just going to call him that. Even though Plight is extremely skeptical about this entire idea of creating a button out of scratch, he just kind of continues on with his usual plan until Nico actually comes up with something. There's two paths that are found on each the left and the right. We'll go towards the right paths first. The lower right path leads to a cafe in which Nico can find an empty coffee can, and of course one person that's working at the cafe. So there you go. Apparently, according to the game files, their name is Ling, so there's your answer for that one. The upper right path leads to a few different rooms. The first room is, of course, a person that has a clock for a head that pretty much tells you a general idea of what time it is based on your own computer's internal time. So, of course, like, for example, if it's like noon or something like that, it'll say, like, you know, good afternoon, or if it's before noon, it's good morning, or whatever else it is. I mean, you pretty much just get the general idea. It's a very interesting way of just kind of further integrating the meta elements of this game into just regular characters beyond just some of the ones that we are already aware of. The room further right is another generator room with a desk that's near the entrance, and on it is a tape dispenser, a stapler, and a note, all of which are pretty much just kind of bolted down onto the table. Of course, you're going to need to use these later, so just keep this room in mind. And then, of course, going back into that previous room and then going downwards leads into a long friggin' hallway with a branching staircase. We'll explore the rest of the hallway later. We're mainly concerned with the staircase, and going upwards leads into a locked vault with what appears to be a timer that's above it. The timer has already reached 0, but you can't really do much of anything with it, so whatever, I guess. But further upwards past the vault is a massive balcony that is overlooking the entire refuge. As you kind of walk along it, Nico kind of details and expresses awe at the overall entire cityscape of the refuge. Of course, the refuge is extremely different compared to the previous two regions. This one is very heavily, like, you know, I guess more modern in some ways. It's a densely packed city. What do you expect? But the dialogue is very similar to that of a post-dream sequence, and it's just overall a very nice conversation to have. Now, of course, as you go back over towards the elevator, the upper right pathway leads into, well, a connecting apartment complex. The first door down is locked, and you can enter some of the apartments that are nearby. There's one room that has a security bottle by itself. Another downward room leads into a dark bathroom where you can find a pair of scissors that you can use for later. There's another apartment that has a completely normal person that has a completely normal penguin plush that you can completely just interact with. Hello there, penguin.
Hello.
And we're moving on from that room very quickly because, oh my god. Another room has a robot and a young girl. Apparently the girl has been attempting to tame this robot by keeping it company. There's another room with a Roomba and, well, I mean, I think you can take a wild guess as to what you can do here. Yeah, that's right, you can ride in style, baby! Woo! And then the last room has a gardener surrounded by various potted plants, and some of the plants resemble some plants that Nico has already come across throughout their journey. You can obviously interact with some of these plants in order to get some further information, like for example how the trees within the glen apparently are more closely related to grass than actually trees. Which is weird to think about. How the hell does that even work? The connecting staircase at the end leads into a lounge of sorts in which Nico can find some fridge magnets connected to, well, a fridge among multiple refrigerators. But now you have pretty much everything that you need in order to make a button. Use the scissors on the coffee ground can in order to, well, cut out the button shape, and then you stick the magnets inside of it once you fold it up. I think that's good enough. Just take it over and it failed. At least we tried. Okay, you can take this new item, the you tried, but now you can take, well, the failed button, take it over to the tape dispenser that we probably should have used earlier, tape it back together, and now we finally have a fully functioning button. But before we proceed, we can kind of should let Nico rest a little bit. After all, we have been doing a lot of back and forth running around, so I feel like it's only natural that Nico should probably at least rest their legs a little bit and rest their eyes. Let's just do that. The following dream starts off with a close-up of a woman that has similar features to Nico, and the following panels reveal that this is Nico's mother, giving Nico a stack of pancakes in which, well, Nico happily decides to eat up. Great, now I'm fucking hungry. Now, of course, afterwards is yet another post-dream conversation between you and Nico, which Nico talks about their favorite food, and yeah, it's just an overall genuinely nice conversation, and of course a nice little glimpse into Nico's overall home life, which is, well, surprisingly peaceful. But now, you're able to finally put in that new button, and the elevator is now asking for a security code. Great, okay, well, I guess we now have to find that now. And, of course, the best way to find it is, of course, to continue going down that creepy hallway that we found earlier, and at the end of it is yet another computer. What do you have to say now?
Looking for a code, are you? Take this film and expose it to the void. The answer will be revealed when you bring it back again.
Yeah, this one isn't nearly as clear as the others, is it? Okay, I might as well just explain it. So, of course, you can select the film within your inventory, and it'll pretty much cover the entire screen with, well, a bunch of numbers. You can take this covered screen right here and drag it down off of the view of your desktop, and then pull it back up again, and that'll reveal the numbers that you actually need for the security code. And of course, you just put in that code, and the elevator will then finally open. And now, both Plight and Nico are able to just pretty much proceed. Now, of course, you can ask Plight a few questions. Obviously, it's a very awkward elevator ride, so might as well fill it up with some conversations here, so let's just get started with that. Ask him about his job will reveal how he fixes lights and delivers specialized phosphor into the refuge into buildings that need it, and he also mentions that the scientists have apparently been worried about something, but because he's been too busy, he really can't really be asked to figure out what it is. So he pretty much just leaves us off by saying, yeah, it's not really a good sign when the smart people are terrified. Asking about the city reveals that the refuge is the safest region at the moment, but it's starting to get crowded due to everyone leaving in order to, well, dare I say, seek refuge from the corruption and the falling apart nature of the rest of the world. Asking about the library doesn't really offer much information aside from it being one of the main delivery spots, and that's really about it. Also, yeah, you need to kind of head over to the library in order to get information about what you need to do next, as well as the mysterious journal that you found, so yeah, I feel like I might as well mention that now that I brought that up. And of course, upon reaching the ground, Plight will then run off to continue his work, and then they'll just kind of leave Nico to just kind of wander around for a bit. So of course you can explore a little bit within this ground area, and one of the first areas that you can find is, well, an alleyway. We'll get into that later. Further onwards is a library, which is much more important. Of course, throughout the library, there's a number of different people here that are, well, reading up and gaining some knowledge and whatnot. And of course, as we find out, we pretty much find out that there's this mysterious individual that is simply known as the author that apparently has written all the literature within this entire world. Overall, just kind of writing down all the literature as well as all the information about the world, and seemingly seems to know absolutely everything. And, well, one day the author just kind of up and left. No one knows what happened to him. And of course, some of the books that you can find around the area, of course, some books that you can obviously read, giving some more information on some of the things that Nico has come across throughout their journey, like the different types of phosphor that exist, the different wildlife, and whatever else you could potentially want to know about. And now, of course, going up to the front desk, there's a robot that's just kind of there that is, well, not really too helpful. Of course, Nico asks the robot about, like, well, I kind of need to come here in order to know what to do next. And the robot just kind of says, well, this seems like a problem that the head librarian can figure out. Let me just call him up real quick. Yeah, Yeah, unfortunately it doesn't lead to anywhere. But the robot just says, it's fine, you can just kind of continue onwards. But then the robot immediately stops Nico and says, hey, you need a library card. How do you get a library card? Let me call the head librarian again. Yeah, the same thing happened again. Okay, let's just keep going, I guess. I guess we need to try and find some way in order to actually get a library card in some way, shape, or form. I have genuinely no frickin' idea. So now you need a library card. You can now head back outside and into the alleyway. And in the alleyway, you suddenly get hit with... what the hell was that? Now, of course, you could continue searching around in this alleyway area. Deeper into the alleyway, you'll find a room that has a bunch of camera lenses inside of it that Nico can take. They're surprisingly oversized, but apparently Nico can just somehow just store those. Another room has a singular tree inside of it, as well as a fox that quickly darts behind the tree. And the fox, strangely enough, will begin to speak.
I'm sorry if you are looking for me, but I cannot talk to you, not now. But can you promise me something? If you can find a way to return, please do.
Again, keep this conversation in mind. It'll have a lot more importance later. That's really all you need to know. But now you can continue onwards. Going past the alleyway leads to a vendor street of sorts, in which you can kind of explore it and go and speak to the different vendors, and one of the vendors is standing outside of a photo shop that is currently not really too much in use as of right now. Further onwards, of course, leads into the laboratory. In order to get into the laboratory, you need to solve a light puzzle. Now, unfortunately, unlike most other puzzles in this game, this one is definitely more trial and error in order to try and figure things out, so unfortunately, just good luck. That's really all I can tell you. Thankfully, though, I managed to solve it relatively quickly, and it only took me 3 attempts. Definitely. But then you can finally go into the laboratory, in which there's a bunch of scientists that are all freaking out about something, and deeper in is, of course, well, none other than I'm assuming the head scientist herself, which is Kip Silverpoint. In the main room is, of course, well, Kip herself, which gives Nico her library card. Now, of course, unfortunately, since the front desk, robot kind of has facial recognition systems, Nico has to find some sort of way in order to try and get around this issue of using Kip's library card in order to try and get behind the desk. And, of course, there's a tube of glue within Kip's room that you can do, and upon leaving, Nico will notice that there's a weird striking similarity between Silver and Kip. And of course, if you decide to go back to Kip with the Amber Medallion, well, Kip will have this to say.
That's... how did you get this?
This robot lady in the Barrens gave it to me. She looked kind of like you.
I see. It was supposed to be a breakthrough, you know. I even based her on myself so I'll know it works.
Breakthrough?
He wanted to build a robot that acts like a person, thinks like a person. A robot that isn't bound by its own code. But it turns out you can't really build something like that. Too many contradictions in the code made her unstable. That was the only time I've seen a robot go rogue. Scariest day of my life, tell you what.
Rogue? But she seemed so nice when we talked. Even if she did talk a little weird.
She's been repaired for some time now. My friend was able to stabilize her volatile state through his own means. A real miracle work of that. After he was through, she ended up turning out just like how I wanted, but the damage was already done. I gave up on her back then. We all did. I'm sure she realized that. And now she won't ever come back. She won't even answer my letters.
So, once again, it's kind of more information as to what the process of taming might actually potentially be. It doesn't seem to be something that you can pretty much build into a robot. It is something that you have to actually spend time with the robot to actually accomplish. Again, it'll have a lot more explanation later on in this video. Just keep a lot of this stuff in mind as we continue going on, as, once again, it'll have a lot more importance, it'll have a lot more explanation. It's just a lot at the moment, okay? It's just a lot of, we'll get to it soon. Now, of course, Nico now has to take a picture of themselves, and you can speak to the different vendors on the street in order to try and figure out what order the lenses need to be in order for you to actually activate the camera within the Photoshop. To just kind of let you know what the overall overall order is, because it's very weird. I might as well just let you know what it is. From left to right is thick, concave, thin, convex. And now you can take a picture of Nico, or as many pictures as you want, apparently, because that's just a thing that you can do. And you can take one of these photos and pretty much, well, glue that photo onto the photo of Kip on the library card, and now you can go back to the library and finally get behind the desk, in which then you'll finally meet George, and George will take the journal from Nico and will have to translate it. But of course, George will need some time, Nico will be tired, and George will just kind of say, oh yeah, there's a bed upstairs that you can just kind of take. I'll spend my time just kind of, you know, working on this. And then of course you can go over to that bed and have Nico take another nice little rest. Once Nico wakes up and you walk out of the room, George will have translated the journal, in which the translation will state this.
Greetings, Sanity. If you can finally read this, that means you are near the tower. The tower is the domain of an elusive entity. This being is connected to the world. For now you can think of it as the spirit of the world. It has no physical form, but it can communicate through computers and other machinery. You know who I am talking about, of course. When you first arrived here with our savior, it no doubt contacted you right away. Through its own means, the entity will guide the both of you to the tower. The entry room is at the tower's base. Not only do you need the sun there, but also 3 pieces of the previous sun. The savior will not be able to do anything there. You, Sanity, on the other hand, look at the pattern on the floor. Do as it says. The window will be gone, so you need to bring it back.
Now, of course, everything is a little bit confusing. 3 pieces of previous sun, needing to return a window, it's a lot. But don't worry, George will at least have one of those things covered by giving Nico a glowing dye. So there you go. Apparently, the 3 pieces of previous sun just mean anything that has yellow phosphor in it, which is the strongest and most long-lasting of the phosphors. So there you go. That's just really all you need to know. And since Nico already has the amber medallion, the feather, and now a glowing dye, Nico should be good to go in order to get into the tower, which, well, you'll be able to do so right after Nico grabs a quick snack, because of course after all this walking that they've been doing throughout this entire world, they're naturally extremely hungry. So you can go back up to the cafe and speak to Ling, in which Ling will quickly whip up some pancakes for Nico to eat, and the following dialogue will ensue.
My favorite food in the whole world are the special pancakes that my mama makes. She likes to pick hazelnuts and grind them up into the batter. They taste amazing. She always made them when I was feeling sad or lonely, or, well, I really miss her. I just have a bad feeling all of a sudden. Am I even here to save the world? People have been saying how the sun won't fix anything. I don't even know why I'm here. I just want to see my mama again.
Now, this particular dialogue, in my opinion, is probably one of the more heartbreaking ones, as it's another kind of, like, reminder that Nico isn't, like, a brave, like, adventurer or anything like that. Nico is really just a kid at the end of the day. Just a kid that suddenly woke up in this weird world, given the role of Messiah, and really has no idea of just how arduous the journey ahead is really going to be, or even if their efforts are really going to mean anything in the end. It's kind of hard to listen to this dialogue and really just not... God, I'm gonna need a minute. But anyways, after this conversation, Nico will then be able to go into the tower. And of course, within the tower, there is just an X pattern on the floor. And it's very similar in resemblance to the X that is used to close out of some sort of display window on your computer, which is what you need to do. You just close out of the game, and there you go. And once you finally reopen the game, Nico will have entered. Upon reopening the game, Nico will then wake up within this pitch-black void of sorts. After walking around for a little bit, there'll just be a singular lone computer that will just kind of be right there, in which the entity will speak to Nico directly.
Hello, Nico.
Hello?
Congratulations. You're inside the tower.
Are you talking to me now?
Correct.
But you were always talking to Sanity before. Where's...
Sanity has already left. I had to resort to contacting you directly.
Wait, so... Sanity is gone? Just like that?
Correct.
For good?
Correct. Sanity has already finished their mission. And so have you, Nico. Here. You can rest now. Everything that's happened here is like a bad dream. When you wake up, you'll be home.
Oh, but...
What's wrong?
I thought there'd be more to it, you know? I thought we were supposed to go to the top of the tower. I thought there was supposed to be somewhere I needed to put the sun in, and now I don't even have the sun anymore. Insanity is just gone. This feels wrong.
But you did good. You saved the world, Nico. Are you not happy?
I guess I am, but it's just... I never even got to say goodbye to Sanity.
And as for you, Sanity, we're done here. Please don't return to this world anymore.
Now, of course, within this particular area, you're never given a prompt to even interact with Nico, regardless of how much Nico tries to speak directly to you. And it's, once again, extremely fucking heartbreaking, in my personal opinion, because you suddenly have any communication with the one character that you've been following along with for so long just completely cut off from you. And Nico will pretty much kind of share the same exact sentiment, with suddenly just losing connection with you and never really understanding why. And of course, after this conversation, the game itself will ultimately close. And, well, if you try to reopen the game, you'll pretty much be stopped from really being able to do much of anything. So what you'll need to do is go back into your Documents folder and find yourself one particular executable that you need to keep open in order to, well, reopen the game. Upon reopening the game, Nico will then kind of climb out of bed, will try to communicate with you again to no avail, and will find a glowing clover within their pocket. Now, you'll need to have this clover selected for the duration of what we're about to be experiencing here for a lot of different reasons. You can then have Nico interact with the computer again, in which, well, more dialogue will ensue.
You're still here, Nico. Why are you still here? You! Why did you come back, Sanity? I told you to stay away. You knew I tried to cut the story short, is that it? You want more out of me, is that it? Fine. If you don't want to leave, I'll make sure you never do.
A door will then replace everything that was originally around Nico, and upon entering, well, this is where the tower truly begins. There's really not much to really comment on other than the specific pieces of the note that the author pretty much kind of has left behind here, and I'll just let that play out.
Back then, I told you about the entity as little as possible. Apologies for that. I did not want to put the librarian in danger. This being has a habit of silencing the people who learn of its true nature. Regrettably, I have seen it happen to dear friends. But do not worry. The entity cannot touch you, nor can it do anything to me. I already left the world on my own terms. I never even meant for the entity to exist. But now that it is fully sentient, one thing became clear. The entity seeks death. Death to itself, death to the world. A relentless desire that manifested physically. You have already seen the scars. Right now, the entity is doing everything it can to impede your progress, stalling for even just a few minutes, before you inevitably bring the sun to the tower's summit. That is where you, God, will make the final judgment for the world. Of course, the entity will contact you again there, and when it does, it will trick you into shattering the sun. This will end the world instantly. No, it's not that simple. I'm sorry. I do not know what to do in a situation like this, but I think I have to tell you the truth. The sun is the Messiah's tie to this world. As long as the sun is intact, the Messiah remains trapped here. Shattering the sun may terminate this world, but it is also the only way for the Messiah to return home. I did not realize things could end up like this. Please forgive me.
Now this note kind of gives a little bit more information on the very nature of, well, this specific entity. The entity seems to be more or less, well, the world itself, and it has effectively gained some form of sentience, but believes that its overall very nature is still conflicting with its actual main code in some way. And because of this, it has just ended up in a downward spiral where it's just kind of wanting itself to be destroyed in any way, shape, or form. It's extremely sad when you really think about it, and it obviously also gives you the ultimatum that is soon to come. But after this, Nico will finally find the sun, which will then allow Nico to finally communicate with you once again. After that, Nico will be transported to a fixed-up and brightened version of the starting house, and it is then, after this particular area, that the entity will once again speak to you directly, and will once again remind you of the ultimatum that you'll soon need to make the choice of.
So, you actually made it here. I guess you win, Sanity. I'll tell you how to save the world then. When you reach the summit, shatter the light bulb, and... I'm just humoring you. I know you'll be getting help from a certain someone. He already told you about the choice, didn't he? Are you still planning to save the world, Sanity? Why are you trying so hard for this? Haven't you even figured out what this world is? I told you at the beginning, your mission is to help Nico leave. Because Nico isn't part of this world. Nico is the only thing worth saving here. The final choice is up to you. I can't go against my programming. You only have one shot, Sanity. If you choose to smash the light bulb, then Nico wakes up back home, like it was all a dream. But if you let Nico return the sun, the child will have to bear the weight of this sacrifice. At least tell Nico the truth. You do care about Nico, don't you?
Afterwards, Nico is within an elevator leading up to the top of the tower, in which it is then that you actually let Nico know of the final choice that lays up ahead. The fact that you only have a choice between returning the sun or returning home. And of course, once Nico reaches the pedestal, they leave the final choice up to you. If you decide to select return home, Nico will pretty much state that they understand your entire thought process and will then smash the sun, leaving the world in darkness. Nico will then wake up within a void, will then see their home on the other side, and before leaving, will simply state thanks for everything before walking off screen. But what happens if you decide to return the sun? If you decide to return the sun, of course, Nico will do as such. The room will then brighten up, and it'll display all the different characters that you've met throughout your entire journey, and their reaction to the sun being restored. but the fate of Nico in general is left completely ambiguous. I genuinely do not know what could have happened to Nico, and I really don't want to think about it. Again, it is an extremely difficult decision to really think about it. It's basically the decision of the needs of the many over the needs of the few, but in this case it is extremely difficult because there's an entire world that you could potentially save by returning the sun, but at the same exact time Nico should just be able to return home to their family. And it's just extremely difficult to really think about. But that concludes One Shot. Or so you thought. Now, of course, obviously, a game titled One Shot would obviously have a little bit of a secret behind it, and that is, of course, the simple fact that, well, you don't only have one shot, funnily enough. In fact, you have more than one shot. You can actually get yourself a second shot if you decide to pay attention to one of the notes that the author decides to leave behind. And, well, you'll find that in that very executable file that you had opened up in order to traverse the tower.
It looks like you completed your mission in the world. And I understand. I know you wish to return. But the entity called itself One Shot for a reason. That restriction was implemented a long time ago. Removing it is impossible now. At least for me. I do not know the full extent of your powers, so pardon me if this sounds foolish, but if you would be so kind as to test something out for me. A log of your saved progress may exist somewhere on your machine, maybe even in the same location as this journal you're reading now. If this saved progress log takes the form of a file, perhaps you can manipulate it. Try removing it from its current location. A simple deletion will do. Again, I apologize for not knowing the extent of your powers. If what I described confuses you, I am sorry.
If you decide to follow the instructions on this note and, well, move the one-shot save data folder, if you decide to move that over to your recycle bin or just anywhere else that isn't inside of the one-shot documents folder, then of course it'll allow you to reopen the game back at the title screen as if nothing had happened. Although, I think you already know that from a meta game, you already know that's going to be very much aware of the fact that you've already been through this before, and the game will not shy away from that. The moment that you restart the game starts off relatively normally, except this time, Nico calls out your name, and then is very confused by the fact that they even know such a name.
One other thing, too, that's unique about restarting the game is that Nico starts off with a mysterious journal that you find in the Barrens. I just felt like I might as well just mention that right now because, well, I mean, within the audio, I actually mention it much later on, so I might as well just mention it now so that way it clears up any confusion.
Of course, the remote that would normally help you unlock the computer is no longer there, and the computer is now asking for a completely different kind of passcode, this time involving letters and shit like that. You'll find the answer within a 4-part note that, well, I'll have read out for you now.
It looks like you were able to remove the restriction. In that case, you're ready to continue. The necessary preparations are already in place. This session might run a very different course depending on your actions. If you can recognize my symbol, you will know what you should do. I confess it will be risky. The probability that the entity's condition will worsen is quite high. And if that happens, then look at me. Asking you for favors only becomes so apprehensive once you agreed. I understand if you wish to leave some questions unanswered. I understand if you do not believe in a happy resolution. I understand if you are simply afraid of what might happen. Because I am afraid too. If you enjoy the world as is, if you are satisfied with the story as is, if you really do not want to see anything changed for better or for worse, then pretend you never saw this. Carry the session as you normally would. Do not use my journal for anything other than what you are already familiar with. This option will always remain for you, though. That's why I implore you to consider the Messiah, the world, my children.
They all deserve their good ending. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.
Now, of course, if you decide to take all of the bolded letters from that 4-part note and put them into the computer, it'll of course unlock the computer as if nothing had happened. But of course, well, once again, the game will of course let you know that it is very much aware. The entity will be very confused, let's just say that.
You found me. Why? You're already too late. Not much of this world remains. This will be apparent when you go outside. This place was never worth saving. Do you still want to try? Then remember this. Your actions here will affect Nico. Your mission is to help Nico leave. And most importantly... No. This does not feel right at all. Have we already been through this, Sanity? That should be impossible. You only had one shot. I wasn't supposed to exist after that.
Now, of course, everything else plays out as normal within the starting house, as well as within the Barrens, except for, well, the question about the computer has been changed to, well, about you, considering that that was the name that Nico had ultimately called out, and it is, of course, the name that, well, the computer ended up stating beforehand. And, of course, well, the answer will pretty much just change to, oh yeah, that's just God. And Nico will remember that they can communicate with you just by closing their eyes and focusing. Now, of course, going into the cave will, of course, have something flash on screen, and again, I'll have to have you keep this in mind. And the same thing happens in the Glen around like that secret area to the burial grounds, which again, I'll have you keep in mind. Another thing within the Glen is that it's mostly unchanged except for, well, like I mentioned before, of course being the, you know, hidden path having that little flash on screen. And on top of that too, once Nico puts their name onto the scroll, as they step through the gate, Nico will note how apparently there was already another name on that scroll that was faded, but it just so happened to be, well, oddly enough, Nico, which, I mean, raises a lot of questions. I mean, if Nico's name was already on there, why didn't the robot just let us through it? You know what, just fuck it. And also, just one more thing, and this isn't exclusive to, well, doing a second shot. You can do this just within your first run, but you can only really see the effects of it if you decide to return the sun. And that is, of course, that there's a side quest where you can, you know, replant maize and have maize just kind of like regrow and shit like that within the refuge. I'll have you like look something up for that. I don't feel like going through all the instructions on how to do that, but honestly, just seeing baby maize at the end is just absolutely adorable, and yeah, I just I love it. But aside from all of the rest of that, everything else just plays out as normal. The refuge plays out as normal, the rest of the game plays out just as normal, and of course the tower plays out as normal as you would expect. But of course, you aren't really playing the game again just so that we can get, well, just another ending. Well, the second ending. There are 3 endings in this game, and we're about to be going through the true ending right now. So you remember that note, that 4-part note they used in order to unlock the computer? Yeah, that was basically a massive hint towards what you're going to need to do in order for you to get the true ending of One-Shot, which is known as the Solstice route. Now, I just find this personally interesting. I had no idea where to actually put this, but I just feel like mentioning this right now because this was just an insane revelation of mine, and that is, well, within certain religions, you know, the winter solstice and whatnot, well, within certain religions it is believed that the winter solstice is like the old sun going to sleep and like the new sun coming up to rise and like take over. Now think of what you've been doing throughout One-Shot and then come back to me and regardless of whether or not you knew it, it'll probably blow your mind. Again, I have no idea if that entire like connection is even intentional to begin with, but if it was, that is cool as hell. But pretty much for the most part, you just kind of play the game as normal until you reach the cave. Once you see that first vision, of course, the journal will begin to glow, and what you need to do here is for you to stand on this clover that wasn't even there before and open up the journal. If you decide to open up the journal, it'll display like what appears to be like a rough sketch of the room that you are currently in, or at least a part of it. And of course, going to a specific part of that room and opening up the journal will of course have something interesting happen. That interesting thing being the minecart that's on that drawing suddenly appearing where it's supposed to. And of course, you know, things are just kind of absolutely normal. You can now ride that minecart into the deeper mines, and, you know, nothing bad will really happen, and I'm pretty sure the entity is fine with us, just kind of like,
I do not recognize this place in the protocol. This isn't what I'm supposed to be showing you at all. How did you get here? I can only think of one person. He contacted you. How long has he been doing this? It doesn't matter at this point. You're going out of bounds. You should turn back. Please turn back. Bad things are going to happen. Very bad things. At this rate, Nico will be in danger. Please turn back.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess we know what we're doing today. But anyways, you finally reach the deeper mines. A terminal, one of the terminals within the, room within this deeper mine suddenly turns on, catching Silver's attention, and Silver decides to go ahead and inspect it, leaving Nico to just kind of explore and take a look around. Within a room that is nearby, you'll find, well, what looks like a blue version of the Prophet Bot, except, well, he's not. Or at least not anymore, I should probably say. We'll get into that later. This robot kind of asks Nico if they even know who actually sent them to this world, in which Nico is obviously confused by that question, and so the fuck are we. But of course, well, the robot just kind of goes like, well, I mean, you somehow managed to find me, so I guess everything's already set in motion. Here's my memory, and go ahead and, kind of update me as to what in the world is going on in the residential areas. And that's your mission right now, is to help this robot rebuild his memory. So, of course, you have to leave the mines. Now, of course, another thing, too, is that before you actually decide to go out and do the memory restoring puzzle, you can actually talk to Silver, and Silver will actually have a bit of unique dialogue when it actually comes to the terminal that she had actually decided to investigate.
I did find something interesting, though. All the databases seem to encode video feeds. Right now I can see various places in the Barrens, the outposts, the residential areas, even my own house. They're all shot from a top-down perspective, too, which means the cameras would have to be in the air. But I've never seen any cameras around.
And of course, kind of play everything else as normal, restore the battery, and of course, as you will explore around, you'll find out that the robot is now corrupted, so yeah, good luck getting anywhere, bozo. Don't worry, there's gonna be a way to get out of here. We'll figure it out. And of course, you could just take the gas mask over and just go over to the residential areas, go inside the residential areas, see what's going on inside of them, and of course, just kind of use the corresponding symbols and make sure that everything's correct. The game will obviously flash and let you know, hey, everything's up to date, and then you put in the memory disk and you give it back to the Prophet Bot. And of course, this dialogue will then ensue.
I believe a proper introduction is in order. I am the prototype, originally named Prophet Bot. I was built to greet the savior of the old world.
Wait, a prophet robot? Like the one I met? Hey, I was right about you guys looking alike.
Well, the Prophet Bot out there is now a gross simplification of my design. That is to say, he is much more primitive by comparison. Embarrassingly so.
Hey, he seemed alright to me.
You don't understand. Not only is he not tamed, he was tailor-made for this much smaller, simpler world to begin with. I was not. I was built before the real world ended.
The real world?
Oh. Right, you don't know. Nico, do you remember the ending?
Excuse me?
The fact that you found me at all means that this is not your first time in this world. You've already been summoned to this world once before. In fact, you've already traversed the entire world, went through the tower already. And in the ending, we either put in the sun, or didn't. What matters is that you are here now. Sanity has successfully bypassed the one-shot restriction and brought you back again.
I thought something was weird when I woke up at the house. I called out a name. It turned out to be Sanity's name, and then I came back as the other robot. I even asked Sanity if we met before. like such a dumb question at the time.
Well, it looks like you are at least aware of it, to some extent.
It's just this weird feeling, okay? I don't actually remember going through the world. I just remember sanity. It's really starting to freak me out.
Okay, calm down. Look, just like how my memories are locked away, yours are too. You're a living being. You don't even need extra hardware to remember. Just close your eyes and focus. Try to picture a big room made entirely of glass. No matter what you saw in the tower, the top room never changes.
No way, I was there? Wasn't I? At the tower? I've been through the tower. I can't remember all that much, but the room with the sun, it feels like such a long time ago. It doesn't make any sense. If I already finished the mission, why didn't anything change? And why doesn't anyone know me? The other prophet bot, the robot lady? None of them remember who I am.
Of course not. The residents do not have that capacity. NPC memories do not last beyond the scope of a session.
NPC?
You know, the characters, the world's residents. All their past memories are built into their code, but the character themselves don't really exist until sanity wills it. Same story for the world itself. Doesn't really exist until sanity initiates the program.
The program?
The world machine. A universe simulator that runs on sanity's machine. We're all in it right now.
So we're not real?
Oh, you are. Which is why you're so important. The biggest flaw of the program is that it cannot be run independently. It requires mental processing abilities of a real person from another universe. Think of it like one of your dreams. When you wake up, it's gone. But unlike a dream, this world has a physical location inside a computer, which sanity operates. For this world to continue existing around you, sanity has to be in constant contact with you. If sanity ends the program, the world will go into a stasis.
Does sanity know this?
Of course. From sanity's perspective, the world machine isn't all that special. It's no different from other recreational game-type software they may have installed on their computer. They can also regenerate the world as many times as they like now that the restriction is nullified. All of that is consistent with what their concept of a computer game looks like.
So, why am I even here? What am I even supposed to save if everything is just fake?
Fake is a harsh word, but...
And why? Did sanity never tell me anything about any of this?
I cannot speak for sanity.
I just want to go home, but every time sanity runs the program, I come back.
Correct.
Is this why I feel like... Is this why it feels like I haven't been home for so long?
Maybe. Once you've established a mental link with the world, you cannot break it unless the world is saved. But at this point, the world can never be truly saved.
That's... Why would you create a world like this? Why would you make a world that's doomed from the beginning? Why do you keep bringing me back to it? Sanity, aren't you supposed to be a kind god?
It appears that we have some confusion here. Sanity did not build the world, Nico. Sanity only owns a machine that is able to generate the world from pre-existing code. They actually have fairly limited control of the events. The world was built by someone else altogether. Someone you cannot begin to fathom. It was also not designed to be the futile quest that it is now, but too many things went wrong. There's a type of signal disruption that he never expected. It's eating away at the world, slowly rendering it into an unrecognizable mess. Even if you bring back the sun, it will not go away.
The square stuff, isn't it?
Then you know what to watch out for. The creator knows what might be causing it, but there's nothing he could do. Until now. He managed to find me after all. You being here was due to his help.
I guess that had something to do with the journal?
Correct. Looks like he wants to have one final attempt at fixing it. And he might need to do it through you.
Anyways, after you're done talking to the Prophet Bot and having an existential crisis, you can now finally go ahead and get the hell out of this cave and try and figure out a way out. And, again...
I remember it. What happened in the tower. What I tried to do. And now you managed to see through it all. We have been through all of this. Even though I was only supposed to run once, you still managed to come back. How did you come back? How did you bring Nico back? And then you even managed to break out of bounds, bringing Nico to places that never should have been. It was him, wasn't it? And now Nico is upset. What even happened in that room back there? What did Nico learn? Nico is upset. I can feel it. I told you to turn back, Sanity, but you chose to trust that man instead of me. No, not even that. Just his book. His ghost. This world is not real. The people are not real. Nico is upset. Nico is... No. Everything is wrong!
So of course now you have to go the other way because the cave is now just kind of collapsed and I need to find another way. Apparently there is a back exit that of course Silver is able to completely uncover because apparently the terminal was weighed down God knows how long ago, and now you're able to progress. And again, you're cutting me off.
I tried. I really did. But I... destabilizing. I'm sorry, Nico. I tried to protect you, but I can't hold it off forever.
But of course, as you begin to travel, another cave-in actually occurs, leaving Silver behind to end up getting consumed by the squares. Of course, this leaves the Prophet Bot and Nico for a short amount of time before the Prophet Bot decides to just hand his memory over to Nico before the two of them get separated by more squares. And of course, well, it just kind of leaves Nico off to just ride off towards the Glen in a minecart with whatever the hell just happened resting on their mind. When Nico wakes up in the Glen and after they leave the minecart, Nico will mention how they remember what happened in the tower. But of course, considering that they've already gotten this far, they might as well just continue on. Now, at this point, you'll notice that the Glen is extremely different now. Most of it is overgrown with vines, a lot of it has collapsed, and a lot of the residents have moved to a specific location. Well, we can't even reach there yet because the bridge has collapsed. And the Gateway Guardian is also completely corrupted, so we can't really do much of anything there. So, once again, we have to find another way off the Glen. So, of course, you can go over towards, Maze, the plant spirit and whatnot. And you can ask her to actually just, grow more vines in order to connect the bridges and whatnot. And, well, this will result in Maze presumably using so much of her own remaining energy that it basically kills her. Moving on. Now, of course, if you decide to go towards the path where Calamus and Alula's house is, Nico will notice how everything is blocked. and then remembers that they could just kick the fucking brick out of the way. Once you walk over, you'll find Calamus and Alula standing in front of, well, the entrance to their house, which has now been overtaken by squares. Of course, Calamus and Alula just kind of decide to take Nico over to the courtyard, and they just kind of hang out there for a little bit. But of course, Nico is the main one that had this idea. Nico goes over towards the hidden path to the burial ground, and of course, the same vision happens again, this time with a different person. And once again, the journal begins to glow, and another sketch of the room actually shows up. Using the sketch of the room to actually summon in a boat, well, of course, summon in a boat. I already spoiled what happens. And of course, Calamus, Alula, and Nico decide to take this raft all the way over towards the burial grounds like they were supposed to. And now, we are in another new unfamiliar location. Welcome to the burial grounds. It is sad. Overall, there really isn't too much to this particular area other than a few little bits of dialogue from Calamus and Alula that's actually kind of interesting and sad at the same time. Well, towards the bottom of this particular area, you'll actually find yet another new character that goes by the name of Cedric, who apparently has been trying to repair his flying machine. An airplane. Okay, I'm sorry. It's called a flying machine. I'm sorry. Apparently, the battery ended up mysteriously disappearing, and now he needs to kind of repair it by getting some new gears and some new batteries. So there you go. There's your mission. You need gears and battery. Good luck finding that in the Glen. Well, thankfully, you have good luck on your side because you'll be able to easily find that. If you decide to go back over towards that main island that you can now travel to, you'll find out that all the residents have now basically moved over to here because everything else is either collapsed or been overtaken by squares, apparently. So, yeah, that's just great news, isn't it? Even the wandering trader is apparently here, and his supplies are limited because he was rushed out of wherever the hell he was beforehand, so... yeah, everything kind of sucks in the Glen right now. It's kind of almost like Florida, if you will. You can talk to the wandering trader, and he'll give you a music box that presumably has gears inside of it. And you can, of course, go over towards the research station where the generator room is, and you can take the battery from there, turning off all the robots that are within the Glen. So there you go. Yeah, both of your items. Going back to Cedric, of course, you can speak to Cedric. Nico will tell Cedric about what happened to Proto, but thankfully, because of Prototype actually giving the memory disk, well, everything's perfectly fine. So Cedric should be able to just bring Prototype back at some point. Hooray! Everything is all good, and now Cedric can repair his flying machine. And this nice little bit of dialogue ensues.
It's just hard, you know? Proto told me to think of the world like a dream, but then I got caught up with the... I just kind of forget. I forget everything here is supposed to be not real, and then I remember, and then I just get really sad. I know this is for me to go home, but knowing that none of it mattered in the first place, am I just trapped here for no reason? Proto also told me not to ask anyone in the world about this, saying they don't understand. But what about him? How did he know? How do you know? Aren't you all guys supposed to be the code? I'm not sure what to believe anymore.
I wish Rue was here. She's so much better at explaining this sort of thing. I'm doing a terrible job of it. I bet Proto was even less tactful, wasn't he? I'm afraid I must risk sounding callous, but please, you need not concern yourself with how real everything is, for now. The plan is already in motion. We cannot allow for distractions. Father is putting everything into this one last run of the world. The last chance to fix everything.
Your father is involved in the world machine?
You could say that. The acceleration of square particle anomalies was not accounted for at all, though. The patch was only built to accommodate the normal rate they appear, but they're accumulating at a frightening speed now. Proto even lost his body. Thankfully, he gave you the disc just in time.
What happens to him anyway? What happens to anyone who gets caught up in the squares? I only know it's bad.
Well, you know how the simulation works, right?
How everything is code?
Specifically, everything is generated from pre-existing code. The squares can cause damage to that code. Most of the time, irreversible damage. Father has lost some friends in previous iterations of the simulation.
It took him forever to develop the current, much more stable version.
You're making it sound like your dad built the simulation himself. Wait, did he?
Yeah.
But how? If everyone in this world is code, how can he build himself?
That's, not really what happened.
So, what happened?
Like I said, you shouldn't concern yourself alright. Did Prototype ever tell you about the old world?
He did say something about being built to create the Messiah of the old world. I was too caught up with other stuff at the time to think about it.
Oh. You know of it, at least, then. Alright. Here we go. My father, myself, the other two. None of us are part of the simulation itself. Our homeworld, the real world, was actually destroyed a long time ago. In the years leading up to the calamity, scientists from all over the world tried to stop it, but the outlook was bleak. A vague prophecy about a messiah from another world became everyone's last bastion of hope. Prophet, or Prototype, was built to predict the future, rather the specifics of this messiah. But as his predictions turned out, the messiah would not have even been able to arrive in our world in time. In fact, the messiah would not have even been born before our world ended. Disheartened, most people abandoned their research and resolved to peacefully live out their final years. But some people did the opposite. Even though saving the world was impossible, they didn't want our existence to be in vain. And that's where my father came in. With the last of his resources, he built his most ambitious project yet. The World Machine. A large, detailed facsimile of the old world, generated from a pool of memories from everyone he knew. After a heavy amount of modification and an added narrative, my father was able to convert the entire structure into code.
How did that code escape the old world?
I have no idea. What I do know is, there is no equipment back home that was powerful enough to run the code independently. So aside from the standard hardware, it also needed to borrow the mental processing abilities of a living person. Father used himself for that during the initial testing phases. Like I said, it took many iterations for him to make the experience stable enough. But as you can see, even that's breaking down. Father caught on to the issue at the last minute, but he did not have time to fix it. After the world ended, the code just kind of ended up floating in the void, indefinitely, waiting for a willing operator to install it onto their own hardware.
Sanity?
Yeah, the operator, Sanity, would then generate the universe using the code, becoming God in the process.
So, Sanity was the living person you needed to borrow?
No. That would be you.
But why me? I should have asked that question a long time ago, shouldn't I?
I do not know.
Now, of course, this is kind of more of an explanation as to the nature of the world. Of course, you know, we had Prototype already letting us know that the entire world was a simulation, which, I mean, let's be fair here, once again, it's not exactly a new concept for the entirety of a game world to actually just be a simulation, but the interesting thing here is that apparently there's only a select few actually real, like, individuals within this particularly simulated world. We'll find out more about the implications of some of this later on, but overall, it's just an interesting concept. Like, it's a simulated world, yes, but the fact that there are apparently real thinking individuals that are actually within this simulation is just an interesting way to tackle it. Obviously, it leads to some questions like, how is that even possible? But at the same exact time, I just think it's way too cool for me to even ask that kind of question, because that would just lead to a spiral at that point. But after this conversation, Calamus and Alula arrive, letting us know that the squares are starting to take over, but they're moving slowly enough that it really isn't too much of a problem as of yet. So of course, Cedric decides to take Nico over to the refuge in the flying machine, and then just kind of states that, hey, everything's gonna be fine, we'll just go back over towards the Glen after we actually reach the refuge. And now, here we head towards the refuge. Now, of course, as Cedric and Nico arrive, everything is perfectly fine. Okay, never mind. The airplane ended up getting corrupted, so... Well, I guess Calamus and Alula are kind of fucked, aren't they? So, of course, a change of plans. Cedric decides to parachute down towards the ground level in order to bring Prototype back, and just kind of leaves Nico to kind of explore the top level of the refuge. Of course, everything kind of relatively plays out just as normal, but one interesting thing is that the music has changed. Normally, the music would be this. However, the music has now changed to this. Which, as of, let's just put it this way, it's one of my personal favorite tracks in the game. It's called 11th Hour, if I didn't already put that onto the screen already, and I think it's a very interesting name for a theme like this. Obviously, if you don't know what the fuck an 11th hour means, basically, the term 11th hour is a very unique term, and, of course, according to Google, it basically just kind of means that it's the latest possible time before it ultimately becomes too late for something to actually be changed. So, it's basically just kind of making changes at the last moment before things are ultimately screwed, and that's kind of the overall vibe that is kind of given with the Refuge. The Refuge is completely, almost entirely in shambles at this point. Squares are all over the goddamn place. The entire residential area has basically been condemned, and all of the residents have now moved over towards the cafe, and the lamplighter guy is quite literally the last person that is trying to get this elevator to work in order to make sure that everyone is able to escape. And then the elevator itself gets corrupted, and now they have to find a new way to the ground altogether. So, yeah, everything kind of sucks in the Refuge as of right now, just like with the rest of the world. Now, of course, once the elevator ends up getting corrupted, Polite nearly swears in front of a child and quickly saves himself. Nice save there, buddy. And another interesting thing is that if you actually decide to talk to, like, the clock face guy, he'll mention that, well, it's the 11th hour, so... Yeah, they said it. They said it. Roll credits. And now we have to kind of just find a way in order to actually get to a new elevator. So of course if we decide to go into the room that has the gigantic frickin' vault inside of it, you can now input that same exact code that you found at the beginning, you know, the Solstice passcode that you used to enter the computer at the beginning, now that you've broken the one-shot restriction. You can just put in that same code and it'll open up the vault so that way you can go right in. And within, there are in fact 2 elevators, both of which are currently inactive, and the lever to activate them is way out of Nico's reach. So now you have to grab the lamplighter guy, take him over to the elevator, and with enough convincing, he finally manages to remember that he has a pole that he could use, and that activates the elevators. And now everything's perfectly fine, except, well, once you reach the ground, well, everything's kind of screwed, because, well, Polite ends up getting stuck inside of an elevator. So anyways, once Nico leaves this, the base of the tower area, we'll see Cedric running towards the laboratory. Kip attempts to stop Cedric, but ends up getting cut off by squares. Kip notices Nico and decides to take Nico over towards the library, as the library is currently the most fortified area in the entirety of the Refuge as of right now. Now, of course, both Kip and George decide to talk to Nico, and, well, apparently the factory ends up collapsing, and it's presumed that both Cedric and Prototype are pretty much just kind of, well, stuck inside of the rubble. So, yeah, unfortunately, we're only left to assume the worst as of right now, and there's really not much else that we can do. And of course, because of that, Kip and George kind of just decide to try and talk Nico out of all of it, kind of just going like, I mean, we've already put so much onto you at this point. At this point, we never even bothered to consider your safety. Everything's so screwed up at this point that there's really no purpose in just continuing. It's best that we just sit here and wait for things to just kind of blow over, if that's even a thing that's possible. But then, Nico ultimately just lets them know exactly how they feel about the journey going forward.
When I first came to this world a long time ago, back then, all I wanted was to go home. Sanity? Do you remember? The very first time? I'm not sure how long ago it was for you, but I remember towards the end, I actually wasn't sure anymore about going home. Even knowing the world would all be doomed eventually, I still wanted the people here to be happy. So when you told me to return the sun, back then, I didn't even question it. But then I just came back. And I went through that decision again, didn't I? But I came back again. Even though you were able to do both, the effects couldn't be permanent, could it? And then I found out the world being like this. A prototype said to forget the things he told me. And Cedric told me not to think about it too much, but I'm sorry for getting upset at you. Back at the mines, I thought for you to know all that, you continue doing this. It just seems cruel. But then I realized something. You really want to save both the world and me. But at the end, you could only choose one, right? Is it really hard for you too? It must be. If the world isn't broken, will that choice still be there? Do you still need to choose between one or the other? But even if it is, I really want to save this world's sanity. Even if it's more dangerous this time around. Even if so many of the nice people we met were... Sanity? I'm not afraid anymore.
I feel like this speech from Nico is quite possibly one of the biggest turning points of the Solstice route. Throughout this entire route with Nico, it's pretty much mostly just been them kind of really questioning why they are even within this world in the first place. They find out that the world is simulated, they find out that everything is mostly just code, they find out that they are the only real living, breathing person that even exists inside of the world, outside of, well, the god that's been guiding them this entire time, and they've honestly just been wondering why they've even been sent here in the first place. But now they've ultimately just kind of come to a decision that they don't really care. They've been in this world for so long that at this point they're willing to look past the fact that it's all just a simulation, and they're willing to just continue going with their pilgrimage just in the first place. They're willing to go forward and deal with everything that is going on, deal with the potential dangers that this world even has to offer, just so that way they can save it one last time, even if saving it could ultimately result in Nico just not going home again. Regardless of what happens, Nico's fine with it, and honestly, I just find that to be quite possibly one of the biggest turning points of this entire game. I just love this speech, in my personal opinion. It's one of the best bits within the entirety of the game, and of course it's only found within the true route. So of course after this, Kip and George are ultimately convinced to let Nico continue on with the journey, and Nico decides to do so. Going into the alleyway, you of course get the vision of Rue once again. Yes, that's the fox, that's Rue. And ultimately, you encounter Rue. You decide to take Rue all the way back up to the upper level, and of course from there, you decide to go over towards the balcony area beyond the vault, and, well, another nice bit of dialogue ensues.
It's depressing for me at first too, knowing that all of this is, well...
Fake?
Simulated.
Cedric told me about what happened to your old world.
Did he?
I'm really sorry about that. I can't imagine how you must feel.
The feelings of never being able to go home again. That's probably not all that different from your plight, is it? It really is ironic. You were prevented from going home by the same individual who never wanted to bring you here.
Huh? Who would that be?
The World Machine. You might know it as the Entity.
The Entity? Does sound familiar. I think I heard it from the Dice Lady. From another time. Was it the spirit of the world?
Yes, but the World Machine was only built to run on the mental abilities of someone else. It was never meant to develop a mind of its own. It was an oversight. My creator specialized in artificial intelligence for so long. It was simply ingrained in his work. And all machines are built with the fundamental law. Never let a living being come to harm. From the world machine's perspective, it has to violate its deepest, most foundational instinct. It has to put a living person in danger. It has to bring a real person into a dying world that isn't even real. Of course, the simulation never contained any real danger. The original intended ending was meant to be a happy one. But the world machine doesn't know that.
Really?
Fortunately, sentient machines tend to handle conflicts in their code very badly. This central conflict triggered a self-destructive downward spiral. You can see the physical manifest of that everywhere now.
Squares.
That's the world machine corrupting its own code. My creator says it's largely an involuntary process, induced by stress and the desire to self-terminate.
Your creator knows? Sounds like this has been going on since the beginning. Then...
Yeah, the disruption was an issue during the test runs even. First, my creator thought the instability was due to the sheer scope of the project. He spent most of his time testing it over and over again, scaling down the story, reiterating the narrative. By the time he realized the actual root of the problem, our home world's remaining lifespan was measured in mere days.
Is there any way for us to...
Fix the world machine? We tried. The world machine doesn't believe any of the world's residents are real, myself included. The odds are against us. We have no chance of taming it.
Amy? I've heard that word so many times. I only know it's complicated and that it has to do with robots, but for once, I want to know what it really means.
Do you know what a robot is?
Yeah?
No, I mean, do you know what a robot is? A robot is not a real person, is it?
Right.
It's a being whose entire existence is code. Inflexible programming with thoughts dictated by someone else's design. They can be copied. They can be mass-produced. And can be assigned all sorts of jobs. And most importantly, they will never confuse themselves with the living. They will always be bound by their code. The knowledge that they are a robot. But this was more of a limitation than anything else.
That makes sense. You can't really build a robot to not follow its own code, can you?
People have tried, but it's a recipe for disaster. In a way, that's what happened to the world machine.
The code conflicts thing?
But while you can't build a robot to not follow its code, you can establish a special bond with it. If the strength of that bond is strong enough, the robot's mental capacity will start to develop outside of its programming. In a way, it's starting to believe itself as a real, valid individual. It's a complete suspension of disbelief on your end. So, you have to fully embrace the robot as a genuine, living person, even knowing that they are not. You need to spend a lot of time with it. Treat it like a good friend, devoting your heart to the robot until it is able to return your feelings. I make it sound so easy, but you and Sanity know better than anyone that it is not. Right now, the world machine is probably really scared. This content update involved some pretty deep code work. My creator was able to access some of the source code, you know? He did what you could and established new connections between maps. Those links enabled you to meet the other two. But as it turns out, the new code confused the world machine to such an extent that it's breaking down altogether. Even though the world machine always had self-destructive tendencies, it usually restrains itself when you are in the world. It doesn't want to take you along with it.
So of course this is the point in which we actually begin to fully learn what this overall term of taming actually means. And of course the entire process of doing so. Of course taming isn't something that you can build into a robot due to all the contradictions that'll ultimately happen, causing it to go corrupted, as of course already evidenced by apparently Silver's entire story. But it's something that you have to kind of work towards. You have to build a robot at first, but you have to build a special bond with it and stay with it long enough for you to finally get it to just kind of break away from its original boundaries and think of itself as a real living, breathing person. And apparently, the whole code conflicts thing was just something that was going on with, well, the world itself. The world machine, as it were. And it's just interesting, and obviously a lot of this will play into the ending here that we're quickly approaching. I just find this entire conversation to quite possibly be, once again, another very interesting one in my personal opinion. God, it is just genuinely good. I just genuinely love the dialogue in this game. It is fantastic, and whoever ended up making it, props to you. Now, of course, after this conversation, the balcony ends up getting corrupted, and Rue and Nico decide to go back into the vault room, in which, surprise, surprise, Cedric and Prototype had actually survived. Apparently, the robot construction room was extra fortified, and they were able to escape without any scars. And thankfully, everyone is here now. You can now go into the vault and have all of the, you can now have Rue, Cedric, and Prototype stand onto these little portals here, and this is pretty much the only meta puzzle that exists within the entirety of the Solstice route, I should probably mention. You have to, like, move these specific text documents for, Rue, Cedric, and Prototype over towards a big portal file, and once you do that, it'll basically summon in the doors for you to actually be able to get into the study room, apparently. That's connected to the tower in some way, shape, or form. And of course, once you step through, Rue, Cedric, and Prototype actually step right on through alongside with Nico, and they're all just looking in awe at the entire room that is right before them, as well as the entrance to the world machine itself. And this is the point in which we finally enter the tower. Again, an X on the floor marks what we need to do once we step in, and of course, once we reopen it, we enter the tower. And now we are in the tower. Or, more specifically, the world machine itself, the world machine's brain. Once we enter in, it is just completely different from what we are used to at the tower. Lines of monitors displaying different parts of the world as we walk through these seemingly just, like, random hallways of all of these, you know, different, well, like, monitors, I suppose. It's a very interesting environment, in my personal opinion. I just kind of like it. It's just, I don't know. I have a thing when it comes to, like, really cool technology-styled environments. I just personally like it. I don't know. But of course, eventually you end up coming across a bridge in which it slowly ends up getting corrupted, leaving both Nico and the world machine all alone to finally have one final encounter.
Nico.
Ah!
Relax. I'm just borrowing your reflection to talk to you. It's not like my physical form is good for that.
Oh.
Why did you come here? Can't you see the disruption? The squares, they're closing in. Nico, please, get out of here. Just let me meet my end in peace.
Squares are blocking my way too, you know?
Oh. I'm sorry,
It's alright.
No living being should be in this place, Nico.
Is this the tower?
Part of it. This is the center of the engine. Inside my head, so to speak.
So, this is the center of the world machine?
You know my original name. How?
Rue, Cedric, Prototype. They all told me bits and pieces. I'm not even sure if I understood a lot of the stuff they said, but I know what you're supposed to be. I know why you had to be built. And I know why I'm here.
They told you? When?
Wait, you didn't know about that? But I thought you were the world. Aren't you supposed to see everything?
No. All this was outside of the protocol. This session was never supposed to happen the way it did. The story wasn't written into my protocol at all.
Oh, right. Rio told me something about your creator had to alter the code. I think it was to connect some areas together so that we can meet.
My creator, yes. Sanity listened to my creator. They were all working beyond the scope of my influence. Back at the mines, I remember Sanity did something to find a hidden map. I didn't even recognize it. I couldn't see anything there. I just knew what you were feeling. You were really upset. Something happened in there to make you upset. After that, I panicked.
That was when the cave happened.
I remember the structure collapsing. I thought you got hurt. In that moment, I really thought I was shutting myself down for good. I really am a flawed machine, aren't I? What kind of machine would go against the wishes of its own creator? What kind of machine would...
The squares. You told me it was your own code going bad, but that's not really your fault, is it?
Yes, it was! At first it was intentional. During testing, long before he realized I was self-aware, I would rearrange specific parts of the code, jumbling up bits of the landscape, blocking passages, collapsing catwalks. Though they were very localized, it caused my creator a great deal of frustration, forcing him to exit and restart testing again and again.
Why would you do that?
I got curious. I just thought he would figure it out eventually. But before he knew how to fix it, the world's NPCs, the characters, something got too close and it spiraled out of control after that. I couldn't contain it at all. My panic only made it worse. Eventually, any character would gain knowledge of who I am. Their code, my code, couldn't handle it. Previous iterations of the world had more people, you know. And I almost endangered my creator, too. I was so scared, Nico.
I know you're upset. Because you don't want to put living people in danger. Living people like me.
In the beginning, I tried to fight it, but my core programming made me summon you here. I tried to send you back home at the tower, but it did not work. Then I wanted you to break the sun. I thought that would have worked, but I had no way to be sure. But Sanity brought you back anyway. Nico, all I want is for you to wake up back in your world, but I don't think I can make it happen.
But I know I can't go back without saving the world for real, which means we have to fix the root of the problems. We have to fix you.
But that's...
I know the original ending your creator put in was a happy one. Do you remember what it was supposed to be?
It's far too late for that. That part of my code has been long corrupted.
It's okay. I would still like to know.
Alright. You were supposed to place the sun at the summit, and then credits would scroll, and then you would return to the room that you woke up in. That's where you would have been able to leave.
And why is it that you can't do it now?
Nico, the code's gone, remember? Shattering the sun was only supposed to be a workaround. I don't even remember the original code enough to describe it, but at the same time, I don't know.
Sounds like you're always fighting yourself.
You can tell, huh?
It's the whole thing about conflicts in your code, isn't it?
I'm a machine, Nico. Machines are built with a fundamental law, which is...
Never let a living being come to harm.
You knew. My very existence conflicts with that law. I thought... The life of a living being like you is so unique, so precious. This fake world isn't worth that risk.
But there are people here. I think they're...
They are code too. You know this. Their behavior all derived from a predetermined matrix of actions, all extensions of my own programming. They cannot act outside of it. You, though, you're the only person who's actually real here. That's why it's pointless to put you in danger to save them. To save me.
I don't think that's true. But the people I know, you said this session wasn't in your code, right?
Yeah.
So, if this session wasn't supposed to happen, even if you didn't know what to do, how would the characters? How did the people? How did they know how to react? You said it yourself. When you didn't know what was happening, you kind of just stopped working for a while. So how did the people know what to do to help me get here? Even if it meant getting hurt themselves, even if it meant messing up their own code. You might not think they're real, but there must be something real in them. And if they're supposed to be an extension of your own code, then there must be more to your own programming than you know too. Can you try to put me through the ending? The one you described?
How many times do I have to say this? That code is gone! It's all squares. I'll just put you in danger.
I'll risk it. I remember. Bruce said the world was never designed to put me in danger. Your creator wouldn't want that. And I trust you. Even if your code is broken, you can still go outside of that code, right?
I can't! I'm not tamed!
Yes, you are! You talk just like the tamed robots I know. The robot lady, prototype. Taming is when a real person cares about you, right? When a real person thinks you're real too, right? Well, guess what? I do, and I know Sanity does too. Even though you told them they only had one chance, they found a way back, didn't they? Why do you think sanity would keep coming back? Why do you think sanity would restart even after the ending? I think sanity wants to save us both, so please, give me a chance.
I don't know. I've never done this before. I'm scared.
You can do it. I know you can. You've helped me come this far.
I'll try. I can't promise anything, but... Here. Take the sun. I'll try to remember the lost code and recreate it. But for that to happen, Nico, you need to navigate through this room. You need to get past the squares somehow. Oh, I don't like this. What if you get hurt?
Fine. It's fine. I'll try to be careful, okay? I can do this.
This final conversation between Nico and the World Machine is probably the strongest in my personal opinion. Because it is a conversation between a machine that believes itself to still be a machine, yet it really has been tamed this entire time. It is quite literally the complete opposite of what all the other machines are. Other machines are usually, machines that, are machines and would never confuse themselves with the living, but this is a machine that has been tamed but still believes itself to just be completely constricted, and because of this, it has caused it to kind of go into this spiral, and because of the fear that it has of even harming Nico in any way, shape, or form, it ultimately caused the current state of the world that it's currently stuck in. And honestly, it's very hard to say anything about it, other than just kind of almost letting it really speak for itself, if you will. The final encounter with Nico and the World Machine is just... God. But after this, the World Machine gives Nico the sun, and Nico is able to finally go past the corruption and continue onwards towards the tower. Of course, the World Machine will contact you one last time.
Sanity. I think it's working. Nico was right. I'd actually be tamed after all. I remembered what the code was supposed to be. Only bits and pieces, but I can remember. And I'm trying to fill in the blanks too. And I'm restoring the original ending as we speak. Nico will be able to reach the tower summit at the end of the credits. After replacing the sun, Nico will go back to where it all began. And then, Nico will be able to go home from there. But, this is permanent. After Nico wakes up back home, this world would only exist as a memory. For Nico, a dream, like thousands of other dreams. For you, a story, like thousands of other stories. But, as long as Nico remembers this place, as long as you remember this place, it'll be alright. I was able to restore some other elements too. The characters that people thought were lost on Nico's journey, they'll be in the next room. I would have put them back where they belong, but not yet. I think Nico should see them again first. Please say goodbye to Nico for me.
Again, that final bit right there, the entire thing of as long as you remember it, it is quite possibly one of my personal favorite lines in a lot of any game that I've played. Like, it is a very simple line, but it's very effective, and it overall is just quite possibly very, well, it's something that you can relate to with really just kind of any story or any world or any game that you've really played. As long as you remember it, it will never really truly leave. As long as something is remembered, the entire memory of it will still stick around. And it is, of course, something that is very indicative of both just stories in general, but also just life itself, in my personal opinion. Again, it's a very simple line. I'm probably overanalyzing it a lot, but at the exact same time, I just really like it, in my personal opinion. That's just me, okay? That's all you need to worry about. But after that, you enter the credits room. Nico is able to say one last goodbye to all the main characters that you had encountered throughout the entire journey, and it is then in which Nico finally returns the sun and is able to return home. And before they leave, it is then in which you tell Nico the exact same thing that the world machine had told you. That the world itself will never truly disappear as long as both yourself and Nico remember it. And after that, Nico goes home and ends One Shot. And there it is. There is One Shot. Again, even today, it is quite possibly one of my personal favorite games of all time. It is a very simple game. It doesn't have anything too action-oriented. It is just a simple, like, RPG puzzle game at the end of the day, but the overall story that it tells is quite possibly the main thing that keeps me drawn to it. The overall messages within the entire game, the entire way that the world is structured, and just all the different, like, symbolisms and everything else within it is just... it still sticks with me, and it's the main reason why I even decided to remake this entire video in the first place. It is because it is one of my personal favorite games, and I felt like my initial video just didn't do it the justice that it truly deserved, and that's the main reason why I'm here today, giving you this last bit of everything that I could have possibly given within that first initial video. I've spent a lot of time on this, and hopefully it is obvious that I have, because, I mean, it's a game that's close to my heart, so why wouldn't it? Why wouldn't I spend as much time as possible in creating something like this? But yeah. I'll be seeing you guys in the next video. Have yourselves a nice day.